Welcome to the Trend Reddit channel. This is a place where we share interesting, humorous, and emotional stories about family life. A millionaire laughed at his brother, who just inherited an abandoned car from their father. But the secret behind this car could change everything. Could this be the beginning of an unbelievable adventure? Let's laugh, reflect, and sometimes even shed tears with these meaningful stories. If you love touching and relatable tales, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any of our videos. Be sure to turn on notifications to get the latest updates on our new stories. Thank you for your support and for being with us on Trend Reddit. The sun was just beginning to set over the vast estate of Jonathan Hayes, the late business magnate whose influence stretched far beyond the industries he had dominated. His sprawling mansion, with its grand pillars and immaculately kept gardens, felt eerily still. Inside, the heavy air of expectation weighed down on everyone in the room, especially Jonathan's two sons, Ethan and Derek Hayes. Ethan, at 28, stood by the window, gazing out over the estate's perfectly manicured lawns. His lean figure, slightly hunched, reflected his introspective nature. A man of few words, Ethan had always preferred quiet contemplation over the boisterousness that often surrounded his older brother. Derek, on the other hand, sat confidently at the polished mahogany table in the center of the room. At 32, he exuded self-assurance, his broad shoulders and sharply cut suit marking him as the embodiment of the family's business acumen. Derek had always been the one to follow in their father's footsteps, grooming himself to eventually lead the empire Jonathan had built. The tension between the brothers was palpable as they awaited the reading of their father's will. It had been a long time coming, this moment of reckoning, and despite their differences, both of them knew that the future of the Hayes family business hung in the balance. Mr. Collins, the family's lawyer, finally entered the room. His face, weathered by years of handling delicate family matters, betrayed no emotion as he unfolded the official document. He cleared his throat and began reading in a measured tone. To my eldest son, Derek Hayes, I leave the majority shares of the Hayes family business and control of our family's financial empire. Derek smirked, his confidence unwavering. It was no surprise to him that he would inherit the bulk of their father's legacy. He had spent years proving his worth, managing the company alongside their father, and making sure he was indispensable. Mr. Collins continued, to my younger son, Ethan Hayes, I leave the 1968 Mustang stored in the family's barn. Silence filled the room as the words lingered in the air. Ethan's head turned sharply from the window, his brow furrowed in confusion. An old car? That was all? He could feel the heat rise in his cheeks, embarrassment mixed with anger. What did it mean? Why would his father leave him something so seemingly insignificant? Derek's laugh broke the silence, a short, sharp sound that echoed around the room. An old Mustang, he scoffed. That's what you get? Well, little brother, if you ever need some cash, I could always lend you a few dollars. Ethan's hands balled into fists at his sides, but he held his tongue. Years of being overshadowed by Derek had taught him the value of silence, of picking his battles. But this was different. This wasn't just about their father's favoritism. There had to be more to the story. Why would his father leave him an old, dilapidated car instead of something meaningful? Humiliated but determined, Ethan turned on his heel and left the room. He could hear Derek's mocking laughter behind him, but he refused to let it affect him any longer. There was something he needed to understand, something hidden in that Mustang. Later that evening, Ethan found himself standing in front of the family's old barn, its wooden doors weathered from decades of neglect. The barn had always been a part of the estate he never paid much attention to, but now, as he stood before it, a sense of purpose filled him. He knew he had to uncover the reason behind his father's decision. The barn door creaked open, revealing the 1968 Mustang. Its once sleek, red frame was now coated in dust, the tires deflated from years of disuse. Ethan approached the car, running his hand along the hood, feeling the cool metal beneath his fingertips. The car was in poor condition, but it wasn't beyond saving. Quite the gift, isn't it? A soft voice startled Ethan. He turned to see Martha, the housekeeper who had served their family for as long as he could remember, standing in the doorway. Her face, lined with age, held a knowing expression. "Martha," Ethan said, his voice tinged with frustration. "Why did he leave me this? What's the point of an old car?" Martha stepped closer, her eyes warm and wise. "Your father was always a man of purpose, Ethan. He never did anything without reason. This car, it meant something to him, something he wanted you to discover for yourself." Ethan frowned, unsure of what she meant. "What are you saying?" Martha placed a hand on the car, her fingers tracing the edges of the hood. "Look closer. There's more to this Mustang than meets the eye. Your father wanted you to find your own path, to understand your place in the family legacy. This car is the key to that." Ethan stared at her, his mind racing with questions. Why had his father been so cryptic? What could possibly be hidden in an old car? "I can't give you all the answers," Martha continued, stepping back toward the barn's door. "But trust that your father had faith in you, even if it doesn't seem that way right now. You'll figure it out." With that, she left him alone with the car and his swirling thoughts. Ethan turned back to the Mustang, determination building within him. He didn't know what his father was trying to tell him, but he would find out. This wasn't just about a car, it was about something far more important. As Ethan leaned inside the car, inspecting the interior, something caught his eye, a small compartment beneath the dashboard. It was barely noticeable, but there it was, a tiny latch. He reached out and carefully pried it open. Inside, he found a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. His heart pounded as he unfolded it, revealing his father's handwriting. The letter was short but filled with meaning. "My son, this car holds more than you know. It's a part of something much bigger, something that will help you discover who you truly are. Trust in your instincts, and you will find the answers you seek. Love, Dad." Ethan sat back, the letter clutched in his hands. There was something hidden in this car, something that went beyond its rusted exterior. And whatever it was tied to his family in ways he couldn't yet understand. But he was ready to find out. Ethan stood in the dim barn, holding the letter from his father, its cryptic message swirling in his mind. The Mustang before him, with its faded red paint and worn-out tires, seemed to mock him in its stillness. Frustration bubbled up inside him. He had hoped for answers, some kind of clarity, but all he had was more questions. What was his father trying to tell him? How could an old car, abandoned in a forgotten barn, hold the key to his future? Determined to find out, Ethan crouched by the Mustang, running his hands over its surface, searching for any sign of what his father had hidden. The car had to mean more than just a symbolic gesture. There had to be something physical, something real that his father had left for him to find. His thoughts were interrupted by the soft creak of the barn door opening behind him. Startled, Ethan turned to see Martha entering, her figure silhouetted by the fading evening light. She moved with the grace of someone who had spent a lifetime in service, but there was something more in her expression now, something almost conspiratorial. "You're still here," she said, her voice gentle but knowing. "I figured you might be." Ethan nodded, rising from his crouched position. "I can't just leave without understanding why he gave me this," he gestured toward the Mustang. "It doesn't make sense." Martha approached slowly, her eyes on the car. Jonathan always believed in leaving a path for others to follow, even if that path wasn't always clear from the start. He wanted you to figure this out on your own, Ethan. He wanted you to see what you're truly capable of. Ethan looked at her, his frustration barely contained. "But what does that even mean? He left me a car, an old, broken-down car. How am I supposed to find anything in this?" Martha smiled faintly, her eyes soft with empathy. "It's not just a car, Ethan. There's more here than you think. Your father had his reasons for everything, even if they weren't always obvious." She paused, her gaze shifting back to the Mustang. "You should look closer, really look. You might find more than you expect." Ethan frowned, unsure of what to make of her words. He had already searched the car as thoroughly as he knew how. But Martha's tone, her certainty, made him think there was something deeper here, something he hadn't yet uncovered. "Why won't you just tell me?" Ethan asked, his voice edged with impatience. "Why all these riddles?" Martha gave him a sad smile. "Because your father wanted you to discover it for yourself. He believed that some things can't just be handed to you, you have to earn them, understand them in your own way." Ethan sighed, his mind still clouded with uncertainty, but something about Martha's words made him pause. He turned back to the car, eyeing it more closely this time. His father had always been a man of subtlety, of hidden layers. There had to be something more here. There had to be. Ethan circled the Mustang again, inspecting every inch of its worn exterior. It wasn't until he slid into the driver's seat, gripping the old, cracked steering wheel, that he noticed it. A small, barely perceptible line in the dashboard, as if it had been hastily patched up. He leaned forward, running his fingers along the seam, and felt a tiny latch beneath the surface. His heart quickened as he gently pulled at the latch, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, nestled within the dusty, forgotten space, was another envelope. Ethan's hands shook slightly as he pulled it out, his breath catching in his throat. This time, the envelope was sealed with an old, wax emblem he recognized immediately, the Hayes family crest. Carefully, Ethan broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. As he read the words, his pulse quickened. The letter was addressed to him directly, and it wasn't just a note from his father. It was a revelation. "Ethan, by the time you read this, you'll already have questions. The Mustang you've been given is not merely a car, it's part of a much larger legacy. One that doesn't belong solely to the Hayes name but to the Carters. You see, your mother and I, well, we weren't your biological parents. Your real parents, Michael and Laura Carter, entrusted you to us when you were very young, knowing that their work would put you in danger. They were pioneers, visionaries in the field of energy technology, and their research was groundbreaking. Too groundbreaking. Powerful people wanted their work, people who would stop at nothing to get it. That's why they hid you with us, and that's why this car is so important. It holds the key to their work, to the legacy they left behind." Ethan's hands trembled as he reread the lines. His whole world was shifting beneath him. His parents weren't his real parents. And this car, this Mustang, was somehow connected to the work his biological parents had done, work that had made them targets? He could barely process the information, his mind racing with possibilities. But one thing was clear, this car, this seemingly insignificant Mustang, held secrets far beyond what he had imagined. His first instinct was to call someone, anyone, to help him make sense of it all. But who? Derek wouldn't understand, and he certainly couldn't trust anyone else in the family. Then it hit him, Leo. Leo had always been his closest friend, someone who understood mechanics better than anyone Ethan knew. If there was something hidden in this car, something more than just letters and compartments, Leo would help him find it. Without hesitation, Ethan pulled out his phone and dialed Leo's number. "Hey, it's Ethan," he said when his friend answered. "I need your help. It's about my dad, and a car." Leo didn't need to be asked twice. Within the hour, he was at the estate, his toolkit in hand, ready to dive into whatever mystery Ethan had uncovered. As they worked together, tearing apart the Mustang piece by piece, Ethan's mind kept circling back to the letter, to the revelation that his real parents had left him a legacy he was only now beginning to understand. Whatever they had been working on, whatever secrets were buried in this car, he was determined to find them. Because now, it wasn't just about proving himself. It was about discovering who he truly was. The Mustang's engine sputtered to life after hours of work. Ethan stood back, wiping the sweat from his brow as Leo closed the hood with a satisfied grin. The car, once a dilapidated relic, was now in better condition than when they had first discovered it. But as much as Ethan marveled at the progress, his mind was fixated on the deeper mystery that the car held. The letter from his father haunted him. His biological parents, Michael and Laura Carter, had entrusted him to Jonathan Hayes to protect him from forces that wanted their groundbreaking work. But what exactly had they been working on? And how was it connected to this Mustang? The hidden compartment in the dashboard had been just the beginning, and now Ethan was determined to uncover every secret this car held. If you find it interesting, please like it. If not, please comment number 1. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this video. Leo clapped him on the shoulder, breaking Ethan's thoughts. Not bad for an old Mustang, Leo said, still admiring their handiwork. But I've gotta say, I feel like there's more to this than just fixing up a car, isn't there? Ethan nodded, his face serious. There's a lot more, Leo. This car, it's connected to something bigger. My real parents, they were involved in some kind of energy technology. And I think there's more hidden in the car. Something they left for me to find. Leo's eyes widened, clearly intrigued. Energy technology? Like what? I don't know the details yet, Ethan admitted. But I have a feeling that whatever it is, it's the reason they were in danger. The letter said the car holds the key to understanding their work, and I need to figure out what that means. Leo whistled lowly, looking at the Mustang with renewed interest. Well, if there's something hidden in this car, we'll find it. Let's take another look. For the next few hours, they worked together, meticulously inspecting every inch of the car. They dismantled panels, searched the engine compartment, and even examined the trunk. It wasn't until they began removing the seats that they found what they were looking for. Beneath the driver's seat, Leo uncovered a small metal box, carefully concealed in the framework of the car. It was rusted but still intact, and when Ethan pried it open, inside were old documents, photographs, and a worn diary. His hands shook slightly as he pulled out the items, the weight of their importance settling on him. The photographs were of a man and a woman, his real parents, Michael and Laura Carter. They were standing in front of what appeared to be a laboratory, smiling as they held up what looked like a piece of machinery. Ethan stared at the image, realizing for the first time that these strangers were his true family. Next, he opened the diary, flipping through the fragile pages. His mother's handwriting filled each page, detailing her and his father's research. They had been on the verge of a major breakthrough in energy technology, something that could revolutionize the way the world used power. But it had made them targets. Powerful corporations and government entities had wanted their discovery for themselves, and they had been forced to go into hiding to protect their work and their son. Ethan's heart raced as he read the final entries. His mother had written about the danger they were in, about their decision to leave Ethan with Jonathan Hayes for his safety. They had planned to come back for him, but they never had the chance. They were trying to change the world, Ethan murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. But they couldn't finish their work. And now, it's up to me. Leo leaned in, his expression serious. This is big, Ethan. If what your parents were working on is as revolutionary as it sounds, then there are probably still people out there who would do anything to get their hands on it. Ethan nodded, the weight of responsibility settling heavily on his shoulders. That's why I have to be careful. I can't let this fall into the wrong hands. Sophie, an engineering student and another close friend of Ethan's, arrived shortly after. She had heard about the Mustang from Leo and was eager to help. Sophie had a sharp mind and a deep understanding of mechanics, and with her expertise, the trio began piecing together the puzzle of the Mustang and the technology it concealed. As they worked, they discovered more hidden compartments in the car, each one revealing additional clues about his parents' work. They found schematics, blueprints, and notes that pointed to an experimental energy converter, something that could potentially revolutionize the way energy was harnessed and used. Sophie was in awe as she examined the documents. This technology, if it's what I think it is, it could change everything. Your parents were onto something huge. Ethan's determination grew with every discovery. His biological parents had been brilliant, and their work was not only their legacy but his as well. He had to protect it, not just for their sake, but for the future it promised. But the more they uncovered, the more dangerous their situation became. The knowledge that his parents had been hiding for so long wasn't just valuable, it was potentially lethal in the wrong hands. Ethan began to realize that they were no longer just restoring an old car. They were unraveling a conspiracy that had roots deep in the past, and there were people who wouldn't want them to succeed. As the days passed, Ethan, Leo, and Sophie grew closer to understanding the full scope of his parents' work. But with every step forward, the sense of impending danger grew as well. Ethan knew they had to be careful. The wrong move could attract unwanted attention. Then, one evening, as they were working late into the night, they heard a noise outside the barn. Footsteps. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest as he signaled for Leo and Sophie to stay quiet. He crept toward the door and peeked out through a crack in the wood. Standing just outside the barn was Lawrence Weber, the Hayes family lawyer. But he wasn't alone. Two men, broad-shouldered and menacing, stood beside him. Ethan's stomach dropped. Weber wasn't here for legal matters, he was after the Mustang and the secrets it held. He retreated back inside, his mind racing. They couldn't confront Weber and his men head-on, not without risking everything. They had to be smart, to outthink him. Ethan turned to Leo and Sophie, his voice low but steady. "We have to get out of here. They know about the car. And they'll stop at nothing to get it." They exchanged determined glances, knowing that the time for hiding was over. Now, it was about survival and protecting the legacy left behind. Ethan's heart raced as he led Leo and Sophie toward the back exit of the barn, knowing full well that Lawrence Weber and his two henchmen were only moments away from discovering the Mustang's true potential. The night air was heavy with tension, and the quiet sounds of the estate seemed amplified in the stillness. This was it, the moment where everything would either come together or fall apart. "Ethan, we can't just leave the Mustang behind," Leo whispered, clutching his toolbox with a white-knuckled grip. He glanced back at the car, reluctant to abandon the work they had done. "If Weber gets his hands on it." "I know," Ethan interrupted, his voice low but urgent. "But we can't let them corner us in here either. We need to be smart about this. We'll lead them away, then come back when the coast is clear." Sophie nodded, her eyes scanning the barn for any sign of movement from outside. "He's after the car and whatever it's hiding. We can't let him get close." The trio slipped through the back door, keeping low as they darted toward the wooded area surrounding the estate. Ethan's mind was racing, thinking through their next move. They had only uncovered the surface of his parents' research, but even that was enough to put them all in danger. Weber wouldn't stop until he had the Mustang and the secrets it contained. As they crouched behind a row of trees, Ethan caught a glimpse of Weber stepping into the barn. The lawyer moved with purpose, his sharp features illuminated by the faint glow of a flashlight. His henchmen followed closely behind, their expressions cold and determined. Ethan's pulse quickened. They didn't have much time. "We need to split up," he said in a low voice, turning to Leo and Sophie. "I'll go back to the car and make sure it's ready to go. You two keep an eye on Weber and his guys, make sure they don't see me." Leo hesitated for a moment but nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Sophie gave Ethan a determined look, silently agreeing to the plan. As Ethan crept back toward the barn, his heart pounded in his chest. Every step felt heavier, the weight of his family's legacy pressing down on him. The Mustang was more than just a car, it was a lifeline to the truth, and he couldn't let it slip through his fingers. Inside the barn, Weber's voice echoed through the space as he issued orders to his men. "Find that car. It's here somewhere, and I want it in one piece." Ethan moved quickly, slipping through the shadows until he reached the Mustang. His hands trembled as he opened the driver's side door, climbing into the seat. He could feel the tension in the air, the sense that everything was coming to a head. He turned the key, praying the engine would roar to life without drawing too much attention. The Mustang sputtered for a moment, and then, with a loud roar, the engine came alive. Ethan cursed under his breath, there was no way Weber and his men hadn't heard that. Sure enough, Weber's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. "There! The car!" Ethan slammed the door shut and shifted into gear just as the barn doors flew open. Weber and his henchmen charged toward him, their faces twisted in anger and determination. But Ethan was already moving, the Mustang tearing through the barn with a screech of tires. Weber shouted something unintelligible as one of his men lunged for the car, but Ethan was faster. The Mustang surged forward, its engine roaring as it sped out of the barn and into the open air. The car's tires kicked up dirt and gravel as Ethan navigated the narrow path leading away from the estate, his heart racing with a mix of fear and exhilaration. Behind him, the sound of Weber's pursuit was growing louder. Ethan glanced in the rearview mirror, his jaw tightening as he saw the headlights of a black SUV closing in on him. He had to think fast. The Mustang's hidden technology was his only advantage, but he didn't fully understand how it worked yet. There had to be something more his parents had left behind, some way to unlock the car's true potential. Come on, Ethan muttered to himself, his hands gripping the steering wheel as he swerved to avoid a tree. The SUV was gaining on him, and he knew it wouldn't be long before Weber's men tried to run him off the road. Just then, a flash of memory hit him, his father's letter, the mention of the car being more than just a vehicle. The energy converter. That had to be it. His parents had built something revolutionary into this car, something that could change the game if he could just figure out how to activate it. Ethan's eyes darted to the dashboard. There had to be a hidden switch, a control panel, something that would trigger the converter. His fingers scrambled across the buttons and dials, his mind racing to remember any clue he might have missed. Then he saw it, a small, inconspicuous button just beneath the dashboard, partially obscured by the console. It didn't look like part of the car's original design. Ethan hesitated for a split second, then pressed it. The effect was instantaneous. The Mustang's engine surged with newfound power, a low hum reverberating through the car as the energy converter kicked into gear. The dashboard lit up with unfamiliar readings, and the car seemed to glide effortlessly over the uneven terrain. It was like nothing Ethan had ever experienced. The SUV was still behind him, but now, the Mustang was pulling ahead, its speed and agility unmatched. Ethan's grip on the wheel tightened as he pushed the car harder, the trees blurring past him in a rush of adrenaline. Weber's men weren't giving up easily, but they were no match for the Mustang's newfound power. Ethan could see the frustration on Weber's face as the distance between them grew. With a final burst of speed, Ethan veered off the main road, disappearing into the woods. The Mustang moved effortlessly over the rugged terrain, the energy converter working its magic. Ethan could hear the SUV skidding to a halt behind him, unable to follow. For the first time that night, a sense of relief washed over Ethan. He had done it. He had outsmarted Weber, protected his parents' legacy, and unlocked the true potential of the Mustang. But this was only the beginning. He knew there were more secrets to uncover, more dangers to face. And now, he was ready for whatever came next. Ethan's heart was still pounding as the Mustang sped through the dense woods, the trees rushing past in a blur. The power of the car's energy converter had saved them, and for the moment, they had outrun Weber and his men. But he knew this wasn't the end. There was still more to uncover, about the car, about his parents' work, and about the danger they were in. Ethan slowed the Mustang as they approached a clearing, the sound of the tires crunching over gravel echoing in the still night. He pulled to a stop in front of an old, abandoned cabin that Leo had mentioned earlier as a potential hideout. They needed a place to regroup and figure out their next move. Leo and Sophie caught up to him on foot, having stayed behind to keep an eye on Weber's movements. Both were out of breath, but their expressions were determined. "You did it," Sophie said, her voice full of admiration as she approached the Mustang. "You really did it." Ethan stepped out of the car, still feeling the adrenaline coursing through him. "For now, at least," he replied, his eyes scanning the surrounding area for any sign of pursuit. "But this isn't over. Weber won't stop until he gets his hands on this car and whatever it's hiding." Leo nodded, wiping sweat from his forehead. "We need to figure out what we're dealing with. There's got to be more to this technology than just speed and power." Ethan agreed, and they moved inside the cabin to plan their next steps. The cabin was small and run down, but it offered shelter and, more importantly, a place to work without being seen. Ethan parked the Mustang around the back, out of sight, and they set to work. The documents they had found in the car were spread across the old wooden table in the center of the cabin. Diagrams, notes, and blueprints all pointed to the same conclusion: Ethan's parents had been on the verge of a groundbreaking discovery in energy technology, something that could change the world. But it was also clear that this discovery had made them targets, and now Ethan had inherited the responsibility of protecting it. Sophie leaned over one of the blueprints, her brow furrowed in concentration. "This energy converter, it's unlike anything I've ever seen. The way it integrates with the car's systems, it's almost as if it's self-sustaining. If your parents were able to fully develop this technology, it could be a game changer." Ethan looked at her, his mind racing. But why hide it in a car? Why not finish the project and reveal it to the world? Leo chimed in, leaning back in his chair. Maybe they didn't have a choice. If they were being hunted by corporations or governments, they might have had to hide it to protect it. Or maybe they were waiting for the right moment. Sophie nodded thoughtfully. Or maybe they were waiting for you, Ethan. Maybe they knew that only you could carry on their work. The weight of her words settled on Ethan. His entire life, he had felt overshadowed by his father's legacy, never quite knowing where he fit in. But now, it seemed that his true legacy had been hidden from him all along. This wasn't just about him, it was about his parents, about the future they had envisioned. Just as Ethan was about to respond, they heard the sound of footsteps approaching the cabin. Ethan froze, his heart racing. He motioned for Sophie and Leo to stay quiet as he peered out the window. To his surprise, it wasn't Weber or his men. It was Derek. Ethan's older brother approached the cabin cautiously, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "Ethan, it's me. I need to talk to you." Ethan opened the door, stepping outside to meet him. He could see the tension in Derek's posture, the weight of something unsaid. "I know about the car," Derek said, his voice low. "I know about the technology." Ethan stared at him, trying to process his words. "How long have you known?" Derek sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I've known bits and pieces for a while now. Dad didn't tell me everything, but I figured out enough on my own. I knew about the technology, but I didn't know it was hidden in the Mustang. Not until recently." Ethan's mind raced with questions. "Why didn't you say anything? Why did you mock me when I inherited the car?" Derek looked down, guilt flashing across his face. "I was angry. I thought Dad had favored you, even in death. I thought the car was just some meaningless gesture, and I resented you for it. But when I started digging deeper, I realized that the car was the key to everything." Ethan crossed his arms, still unsure if he could trust his brother. "So why are you here now? What do you want?" Derek met his gaze, sincerity in his eyes. "I'm here to help. I was wrong, Ethan. About everything. I want to make it right. We need to protect this technology, together." Ethan studied his brother for a long moment, weighing his words. He could see the regret in Derek's expression, the vulnerability he had never seen before. Maybe, just maybe, Derek was telling the truth. "Okay," Ethan said finally. "But we need to be careful. Weber is still out there, and he won't stop until he gets what he wants." Derek nodded. "I know. But if we work together, we can stop him. We can protect our family's legacy." Inside the cabin, Leo and Sophie were already coming up with a plan. They knew they couldn't keep running forever. Sooner or later, Weber would find them, and they needed to be ready. As the four of them huddled around the table, plotting their next move, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. For the first time, he wasn't alone. His brother was by his side, his friends were with him, and together, they were stronger. The road ahead was still uncertain, but Ethan knew one thing for sure: they were ready for whatever came next. The morning sun filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the clearing. Inside the cabin, Ethan, Derek, Sophie, and Leo stood around the table, their plan finalized. The atmosphere was tense, but there was a sense of determination shared between them. They knew the stakes were high, but now, with the truth out in the open, they were united in their mission. Ethan looked at the documents spread before them: blueprints, notes, photographs, all pointing to the revolutionary energy technology his biological parents had been working on. This was more than just a family legacy, it was a chance to change the world. And with Derek by his side, they were stronger than ever. "We need to go public with this," Sophie said, her voice steady. "If we keep it hidden any longer, people like Weber will continue to come after us. But if we reveal the technology to the world, they won't be able to use it for their own gain." Ethan nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. "But we need to make sure it's protected. We can't let this fall into the wrong hands." Leo chimed in, crossing his arms. "We can set up a demonstration, something that shows the technology's potential but keeps the details hidden. That way, we make it clear that this isn't something that can be monopolized or controlled." Derek agreed. "It's the only way to ensure that Dad's work, and your parents' work, won't be exploited. We'll use the Mustang. It's the key to everything." Ethan looked around at his friends and his brother, feeling the weight of their support. For the first time, he felt confident in their ability to succeed. "Okay. Let's do it." The plan was simple but risky. They would take the Mustang to a secure location and hold a public demonstration of the energy converter. They would show the world what the technology could do, without giving away how it worked. It was a calculated move, one that would protect the legacy his parents had left behind while ensuring that Weber and others like him couldn't steal it. The days leading up to the demonstration were a whirlwind of activity. Ethan and Leo worked tirelessly on the Mustang, fine-tuning the energy converter and making sure everything was ready. Sophie reached out to her contacts in the engineering world, securing a venue for the demonstration and ensuring that the right people would be there to witness it. Derek, using his business connections, made sure that the event would be publicized, drawing attention from both the media and the scientific community. Throughout it all, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Weber was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for his chance to strike. But Ethan refused to let fear control him. He had come too far, uncovered too much, to back down now. The day of the demonstration arrived, and the venue was packed with journalists, scientists, and curious onlookers. The Mustang sat on a raised platform, gleaming under the bright lights. Ethan stood beside it, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, the moment that would change everything. Sophie and Leo were at his side, and even Derek, standing just behind them, seemed more resolute than ever. The tension in the air was palpable as Ethan stepped forward, addressing the crowd. "My name is Ethan Hayes," he began, his voice strong and clear. "And today, I'm here to share something that has been hidden for far too long." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in before continuing. "This car, this Mustang, is more than just a vehicle. It contains technology that was developed by my biological parents, Michael and Laura Carter. They were pioneers in energy research, and their work has the potential to change the world. Today, we're going to show you just a glimpse of what they were working on." With that, Ethan motioned to Leo, who stepped forward and activated the energy converter. The Mustang's engine hummed to life, but it was different from any engine sound the crowd had ever heard. It was smoother, quieter, almost as if the car were gliding on air. The lights flickered as the energy converter began to power not only the car but the entire venue. Gasps of astonishment rippled through the crowd as they realized what was happening. The technology was unlike anything they had ever seen, clean, efficient, and powerful. Ethan could see the shock and excitement on the faces of the scientists in the audience. This was the future, and they all knew it. But even as the crowd marveled at the demonstration, Ethan's eyes scanned the perimeter, searching for any sign of Weber or his men. He had expected them to show up, to try and sabotage the event, but so far, there had been no sign of them. Just as Ethan began to relax, thinking they had pulled it off without a hitch, a commotion erupted near the back of the venue. Ethan's heart sank as he saw Weber pushing through the crowd, flanked by two of his henchmen. They were moving quickly, clearly intending to stop the demonstration before it could be completed. "Ethan!" Sophie called out, her voice urgent. "We've got company." Ethan's jaw clenched, but he didn't panic. They had anticipated this. He quickly signaled to Derek, who had already alerted security. Within moments, guards moved to intercept Weber and his men, blocking their path. Weber's face twisted in anger as he realized he wasn't going to reach the stage. He shouted something unintelligible, but his words were drowned out by the roar of the crowd as the Mustang's energy converter reached full power, illuminating the entire venue with a brilliant, clean light. Ethan watched as Weber was escorted out of the venue, his threats falling on deaf ears. The demonstration had been a success, and now the world knew about the technology his parents had worked so hard to protect. There was no turning back. As the crowd erupted into applause, Ethan felt a sense of peace wash over him. The battle wasn't over, there would still be challenges ahead, people who would try to control the technology for their own gain, but for now, they had won. Ethan turned to Derek, who offered him a small, sincere smile. "You did it," Derek said quietly. "We did it," Ethan corrected, his voice filled with gratitude. Together. With their father's legacy honored and his biological parents' invention safeguarded, Ethan finally felt a sense of closure. He had found his place in the world, not through wealth or power, but through understanding and protecting the legacy left to him. And now, with his brother and friends by his side, he was ready for whatever came next. Thank you for listening. See you in the next episode. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Goodbye.